Okay, so we're on record. Okay.
Yeah, John, okay, we on the record, and you're all right if we start the proceedings, John? Yep, all right.
Okay.
So here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome again to another exciting UPF Australia webinar, where today we have an important and time-relevant topic on relationships and peace building with reference to digital technologies in COVID-19, presented by Dr. Chris Sotropoulos. Also, we have with us today, presenting an important topic of managing ourselves and self-actualization, is UPF Australia Vice President, Dr. John Bellavance. Our first speaker, Dr. Chris Sotropoulos, is the co-founder and CEO of Global Opportunities Commercialization. He's also the co-founder and director of APEC Health, and also the principal at Legal and International Commercial Services, and newly appointed UPF Ambassador for Peace. He has dedicated his life to improving humanity through his passion in working in the above domains. Today, he will be presenting a topic that we can all relate to, and especially in the context of the current pandemic crisis. He will explore how digital technology has played a crucial role in being a comfort tool in communications during lockdowns, in building and maintaining relationships and trust both locally and around the globe. We will look at how has the recent COVID-19 crisis made us rethink and transform in our relationship with technology and ability to adapt quickly to navigate through the restrictions for communications, relationships, commerce, and commerce over distances, and the way forward post-COVID-19. So without further ado, I now present you with Dr. Chris Sotropoulos.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Relationships and peace building, digital technology and COVID-19. You can see from the first slide the operational impact of the pandemic. So it represents a meeting between representatives of Mali and the United Nations. And if you look closer on the screen, you can see that there were representatives from France, the United States, Dominican Republic, Estonia, and African nations in order to urgently deal with how Mali would manage the crisis. So this is a classic situation where technology has assisted the human need at a time of crisis. Just a note, this presentation will not conform to an academic model. And it differs from the format I use when I'm providing a legal seminar or a business seminar. And the reason for that is that I want to explore the human essence of who we are, and then how the tool of technology helps us in our objectives, in our peace building and other objectives. So if we could move to the next slide, please. All right, so what do we see here? A photo that I took when I attended the Greek Marathon. No, I wasn't running. I was from the comfort of the last 100 meters as one of my friends was running. And I captured this image and didn't realize what I captured until I looked at it on the screen. You've got at least 4 groups of people. So you've got the lady at the front. Look at her, she's beaming. She's 100 meters away from achieving probably one of life's milestones. She's looking up to the sky. You can see the love, the spiritual enlightenment, the power. Then you've got the chap behind who, I'm amazed, could run a marathon dressed like that, but that's how he wanted to express his love and his happiness. Then there's the runner behind him. But what do you see behind them? You see 4 people running. Now, if you look closely, it's a mum and dad, because they've got the numbers on their tops. But what's wonderful about this marathon is that as they got towards the finishing lines, the kids were waiting for them. And they said, right, kids, jump the barrier. Let's run the last 100 meters together. And it's not a short race, so the parents would have been in muscular anguish, yet they wanted to share this moment with their kids. It was a family moment. It was an achievement, not of mum or dad or the parents, but of the family. So that's the human essence. That's who we are. We believe in God. We believe in community, living our mission, love and spiritual enlightenment. This is important. These are fancy words for some people, but it captures who we are and our need for peace in our environment as well. So if we could kindly move to the next slide, please. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of technology. Again, through images. What do we see on the top left? Grandparents using technology to speak to their kids, their grandkids, their friends. On the top right, a picture that I took from the UPF conference in Cambodia last year, where there were people discussing peace and representatives from over 20 countries from around the world. And you had the group at the back translating during proceedings, as well as translating and then transmitting live to various spots around the world. What a wonderful resource. I was amazed at the diversity of countries and their representatives in the translation booths. Moving to the center, COVID-19. A lot of us, if we've traveled in the last 8 months, maybe 5 or 6, would have seen cameras through airports, screening temperature sensitivity. The picture in the middle is a fascinating picture. So this was taken a couple of years ago when I was in Europe, and it's at one of the refugee camps on one of the Greek islands, Lesbos. So here you've got refugees leaving from war-torn Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, as they make their tour through into Europe for a better life. What do I see? These people have got their kids. Their connection to the rest of the world is through technology. And I was amazed. I thought, you're kidding. They've hardly got anything physically with them, but this is critical. And you can see them there getting power in order to communicate with family. Bottom left, positive tools for kids. We've seen that intimately through the last couple of months with schools here overseas. We've seen in Africa with our colleagues, Europeans, Americans, Asians, as well as here. And on the right, the enjoyment of living the human essence. And the fact that you've got to be in front of a screen for a lot of grandparents was a new experience. But when they look through and see their loved ones on the other side, now there's where the human essence comes in. So again, human essence is the core driver here. The comfort tools are the technology. So if we could move to the next slide, please. Now, when covering tools, you've got to look at the negative as well. And I've just splattered some images here. Google, so-called surveillance and violation of our rights and so forth. On the top right, cybersecurity, the dangers of the internet, dangers of data. In the center, some of the key characters. On the bottom right, another key character from Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. And on the left, something that a lot of us have seen, not just necessarily at home, but pre-crisis at restaurants. Each of the parents and children would be on their device. So that's a negative for that human essence, that conversation style. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So peace building is accelerated using technology. We saw it on the front page. We saw it through COVID-19, messaging, contact tracing apps, interaction with the community through social media, global peer energy. There's been a lot of energy from different groups around the world in order to build relationships and comfort during these times. We've seen a closer bond with relationships and family. In fact, a lot of people have told me, well, guess what? We're all at home now. And you know what? It's kind of nice to be close to the family within the house, but also to then be able to connect through Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp with friends and family and neighbors. Now, this use of technology can occur through an individual basis. So I can connect through these formats with individuals or groups. A community may interact as well through regular Zoom contacts. International bodies such as UPF and United Nations and other groups also use it. So it is now part of our life. It has transformed how we conduct ourselves. And it's also responsive. And it allows group action to challenge hurdles, to overcome fear. So what I mean by that is, for a lot of people, technology is difficult. It's unknown. I don't want to deal with it. I'm too old for it. Well, now there are mechanisms where family and friends and others, other peers, work together to try and overcome those fears, because this is a great tool to enable us to meet our human essence needs. So if we could move to the next slide, please. Let me give you a fascinating example. So when I prepared a drafters presentation, I didn't put this in, but then I thought, hang on a second, this is a nice story. So with one of our other businesses, we're helping the youth be empowered. So it's a youth global empowerment program. So two of the kids in late primary school said, we want to create a better world for kids. And we thought, that's really good. Now, how do you want to do that? Well, we want to interview kids from around the world. We want to find out what their life is like, what their school is like, what problems they've got, and then to get them all together and try and nut out solutions to the problems. And we thought, wow, that's really quite ambitious. And we thought, well, how can we help? Well, technology and our relationships around the world. So you can see the project, they've entitled it Communal Nation by Kids. You can see the two images on the left and the right. So on the left, where you've got the laptop, the kids are interviewing a class of children in Belgium. The class doesn't speak English, so translators needed. Wonderful discussion about different fears, concerns the kids have, interactions with Australia. On the right, a discussion via WhatsApp, using mobile phones with a very bright young lady from Africa. So these kids are interviewing a number of children around the world, and they're very excited by technology. And because they've been brought up with technology almost from the cradle, it's not difficult. It's, oh, Dad, don't worry, I'll sort it out. But they're using it for the human essence. They want to create peace. They want to create caring. That's where technology is. And that's why I wanted to see this example reflected in our discussions, because it's living what we're talking about. Next slide, please. So again, let's reiterate. The important thing here is not to focus on what the technology looks like, but to focus on maintaining and strengthening the human essence. What is it that we want as humanity, as individuals, as groups? Love, faith, nature, our relationship with the environment. We want good things. We want, when I say good things, we want to be good. Family is an essential part of the social construct and how we are and live. We also want to develop. We love development, hence technology, industrial revolution, etc. But now we live in a global community where, as I would say to my mother when I used to travel 20 years ago, I said, Mum, don't worry. A plane ride is like a bus ride. In 24 hours, I will be sitting somewhere on the other side of the planet. It'll be fine. And she was amazed. So human essence plus technology equals peace, love, and a better world. So the key is, yes, there are some negative aspects of technology, but just as the kids on the previous slide said, well, it's outweighed by what we can do. Just as we at UPF and other organisations and individually, we embrace the human essence and how it can be communicated and globally using the technology parameters. So we're living a wonderful time, aside from COVID, etc., where we continue our strength of and living our human essence, and technology is a great tool for managing concern, anguish during the hard times, but also using the positive element of our creativity, innovation to solve problems all around the world. So like-minded union is what's required in order to create peace building. The technology is improving all the time. The reach of the technology is improving all the time. So I'm very positive about using the comfort tool of technology in order to strengthen the human essence and facilitate it through peace building around the world. So the challenge in our discussions, I think, is to reflect on how technology for each of us and our communities, local, international, have been used by us in order to provide a better world, bonding with relationships, with family, with our friends, and also peace building. So that's all I needed to say on this topic, and I open it up to discussions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chris, for that informative presentation. Perhaps I can start with a question. You talk about the human essence being at the heart of communication, at the heart of digital technology. Can you perhaps elaborate a little bit more on how we can channel that human essence through technology a bit more? Do we need more of a understanding in terms of transformation in the heart and mind? Like you mentioned, the older generations. Is this going to take generations to get people to accept technology also as a way of channeling that human essence and building soft trust and building in comforting each other across the globe using technology? How do you see that evolving?
Well, I think as new technology comes on board, it is embraced almost instantaneously by what you call the early adopters. And then the others, maybe if you can put them in two categories, say, oh, oh, this is new, is it? Oh, I've never heard of Zoom. Can you sort of tell me about it? Oh, it sounds great. Oh, maybe I can use it in order to undertake these activities. Oh, that'd be good. Yep. And then you have the, I don't want to go near those technologies. And there, that third group is where we need to hold their hand, be human and understanding and caring, but also even work with the technology developers to say, I think you've made the product far too complex. Can you make it easier? And I remember that with telephones or mobile telephones, that is, where my father, who's in his early 80s, would look at myself and my sister with our smartphones, and he said, oh, that sounds great, but I don't need a mobile phone. And all of a sudden, he said, my sister's got a phone. I couldn't believe it. And her phone's really easy to use. It doesn't have all this big screen stuff. It's just got a dial pad. Can I get one of those? I think it'd be kind of fun. That triggered it. So there was an evolution in process. There was a result. And now we speak daily, and he calls me, I call him, and the functionality of the technology said, okay, for this particular market, they don't need the fancy stuff that the 15-year-olds need or the 30-year-olds need. We'll create something for them. So it's an evolution as well. It's like a little equilibrium for some groups.
Yeah. I like to extend an invitation to people like Apollo or Nelson or Yoshi, perhaps share their experience of transformation and a rethink they saw through their communities in the last 2 months. So if anybody would like to share their experience, that would be great. Randall, you had your hand up, or Apollo? So
I'll come in. Chris, thank you very much to trigger our thinking. And it's good to reflect upon the positives of technology. But if I go back to the negatives, as technology is equally positive to build relationships, it's as equally destructive to break them. For example, we know that from the economics point of view, that Marx has claimed that God was fair and just to create a system of self-balancing where natural death, where natural birth, and the use of those utilities for one animal to live to another and the rest of that ecosystem, things will be okay. But man's intrusion with that balance through technological advancement, it allowed people to live more. It allowed the whole imbalance to create the whole problem we see today. So that's a negative aspect of technology. Let me also bring in one simple example without being too elaborative. I come from Uganda. The kingdoms there, they lived in conquest and defense. They were using a spear, arrow, and knives to fight and win. They had fights, they had imbalances of fighting for items to steal, but the numbers dying in those wars were very few. Now, when the technology came in and there was this element of killing people from a distance with a gun, and the kings wanted to adapt to this, we have had massive destructions. From that time up to now, people have never lived in peace because they have these superior things that comes up. The point I'm making there with all of this is that yes, technology has done very many good things, but as well as doing very bad things. It's a question of mind of us, the way we actually live. And it looks like the winner takes all sometimes. And that's where imbalance of peace comes in. That's my comment.
I agree. I mean, you can't disagree with your comments. Yes, it has negative connotations and practices and observances. The key is to strengthen the human essence.
Yes.
As opposed to saying, oh, we must follow technology because it can do something. It's no, it's a tool to work with the human essence. Now, in cases where it hasn't and doesn't, and we all know lots of cases like that, those of us who can see across the negatives have almost a positive obligation to work and say, hang on a second, I think you're getting a bit lost. I think you're like that picture of the family where everyone's sitting, looking at their screen, and I've seen that 1,000 times.
Mm.
We have to say, no, hang on a second. This is a no technology zone. We're sitting and having dinner or whatever the situation is.
Mm.
So you're right. But it comes down to the humans that want to make change and keep the essence strong, to communicate and set groups to try and counter these negatives. The negatives will always be there. We know that.
Thank you. Randall, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks. Today's newspaper in Geelong was talking, I don't know if that's backwards for you, but basically saying that there were some positives with the pandemic, with different things at home that people had. One of the things also with myself with the interfaith activities, I was very interested in getting the different faith groups and the Buddhists, the Muslims, a lot of the different Christian churches also have their different meditation times or readings, sharing different quotes of the scripture that they have, different ways to help with getting communication there. Because one of the things that government is noticing now is that there's a lot of mental health issues that are going up, and what we call mental health today used to be called, used to be addressed by the churches for the spiritual type of guidance and assistance. And so to be able to use this technology for the different faith groups to be able to communicate with the people that, do need help is a big factor. As we come out of this, I was wondering your input with this, Chris. I'm just wondering, are there different actions, different kind of mentality, different styles or operating systems that we should use for the gatherings again? They're worried about mass gatherings and people just getting together and spreading the infections. And when the first day that they said that there were restrictions, it wasn't just the pubs, it was churches. All locations of worship. And the reason for this was because, according to the Prime Minister, we have no confidence in them. And this is also because, okay, there is the history in other countries where, people would go to church and then all of a sudden 17 people are, positive with the virus. And so there is the, greeting with hugs, with different things, with, being in each other's faces, and, you're comfortable with these people. You're in their face more than you are with, workers or people on the street. So there should be an understanding. And I'm thinking also with the technology, if anyone's feeling crook, stay home, but participate on Zoom with the church services once this gets together. When you do come to the church service, if you want, is there different little groupings that you can have in different areas around the church grounds, so that there's just 10 outside at a time, because you're allowed to group in groups of 10 with the right distance. So I'm just wondering different ways that we can have as an operating system so that we can help the different faith groups to alleviate the mental distress that a lot of people are going through and be able to actually meet.
Yep.
Thank you, Randall. You're absolutely right. I mean, I've seen this as well with some of the religious institutions, and some of the high net worth individuals in the community for some of these groups have said, hang on a second, why don't we buy some time on Channel 31 or something of that nature, and have some of the proceedings, the religious proceedings, be recorded live, so people stay in there, undertake it from there, observe it from their home. I think we will see the community committees and the committees that often revolve around institutions, having a few young people saying, hang on a second, I think we can put a camera in here. I think we can do some Zoom or some other format. What I've particularly noticed also with the elderly during this time is a lot of fear. And so they're the ones who are going to say, hang on a second, I'm really concerned. I don't want to die. Yes, my church or temple or mosque or whatever it is very dear to my heart, and I practice, but the practice will now be done differently, whether it's through radio observances, listening to radio, watching something on television, the committee around the religious institution managing different options as you recommended, Randall. This is a new world, and this will happen. And this will happen because from my understanding of some of the leaders in the religious institutions, they're very close to government. They don't want to upset government. And so they will feed the message down to those within the committee environment of the institutions to start instituting practices.
One of the practices they had in the States with church services was drive-in. So go to the car park, listen on the car radio. Here in Victoria, you're only allowed to broadcast a radio signal 5 meters. That isn't enough for the whole car park. I'm just wondering if we can somehow lobby Victorian government to extend that to like 30, 50 meters, something like that. So that we could have more people just stay in a car park to hear the service that's going on inside. If, in case someone does have a sniffle, we can't have the whole family stay home because one of the kids is crook type of thing, but we can stay in the car.
That's a fascinating idea.
Thank you. I have Optimistic. Do you have your hand up? Would you like to say something? Yes, go ahead.
I just had to change rooms because my iPad was dying. Technology. I love that talk, Chris. It was fantastic. I just wanted to touch, like, my favorite part was about, made me think the younger children doing the interviews. I think that was excellent because they are so used to technology that it's just such a simple explanation for them that they would think of something like that, whereas it wouldn't even occur to so many people that haven't been using technology as much and been brought up with it. So yeah, I thought that was fascinating. Yeah, I've noticed so much in myself. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm a psychic medium and spiritual mentor. So I've been doing my work online a lot lately, which a lot of people of my clients have known that's a possibility. Although I've had more and more people at the moment reaching out to me because of that, because they still want some readings and healings and help and guidance in this uncertainty. So it's been great for them to realize that they can contact me in that way. And I just wanted to comment that a lot of people have sort of been nervous and not wanting to do so much online that I've experienced, but people still pick up on your energy. So even if we're not seeing each other physically, they're still picking up, like we are now, other people's energy. So there's pros and cons, so many pros and cons with being online more. But I would like to know how we can help people recognize when we are having negative effects from technology, like the families that are sitting around the table and detaching. How can we help people realize when there is a bit too much and they're not getting the benefits from it? Like, how can we help them see that? Because they might be picking up and getting stressed and physically tied in their bodies and angry and not releasing what they need to release because of technology, but they might not have the education to realize. Like a lot of people like me would notice that straight away when we're feeling we've just had too much interaction, not enough grounding, not enough outside time because we're not allowed to or whatever. But a lot of people wouldn't recognize that and wouldn't know it's because they're interacting with too much technology. What do you think, Chris?
I think. Well, thank you very much, Xavier. Maybe I'll ask the rest of the group to comment rather than just me. Anyone else that wanted to?
Well, I have two hands up. To Nelson, then Darlene. Go ahead, Nelson. You need to unmute yourself, or
yeah. Thank you, Brother Will, and thank you, Dr. Chris, for your beautiful presentation and your explanation about technology. And especially, I love the words caring, peace, love, family, and nature. That is one beautiful words, and that belong to our peace work. And I just want to mention that I am using Skype. I'm preaching via Skype from 2009 when I came to Australia, and I want to preach in Pakistan. So I started preaching via Skype and telephone. But I have some difficulties during that period because of internet in some areas, because my preaching was not in one place, but it was divided into different cities and areas and rural areas and other countries as well, like Bangkok and Abu Dhabi, UAE and UK. So what I was facing about the internet problem, especially in Pakistan, where I preach via Skype and telephone. So I use, when I have no internet, then I can use telephone facilities. So I'm just want to share with you that today's technology is totally depends upon the internet, strong internet. Then we can be very successful. Otherwise, it's very hard. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your presentation, and God bless you and God bless everyone. I pray for everyone because we have peace family, and through peace we can say we are one. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. And I wish you improved communications with your congregation in Pakistan and
yes.
And moving forward. We need to take one more comment from Darlene, and then we have to go to Dr. John Bellavance. So Darlene, do you want to go ahead?
Would I be allowed to add something later on?
Yes. Darlene, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Chris, I wanted to go back to that picture that you originally put up that was in Greece that you were referring to. It was really great. Like, what was the event again?
It was the Olympics. It was the marathon. So they have a marathon race once a year.
Right.
But
okay.
it's mostly families, and we've even had blind people running. So it's not seen as for professional athletes. It's more for anyone else who wants to have a go.
Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, that picture is amazing. Like how you captured it.
How I captured it, I don't know. I just took a photo and looked back at it. I thought, oh my God, look at that!
It's a great photo. Is that your hobby?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, there's another photo where there's a couple of runners, and the front lady, she's got her mobile phone, and she just puts her arms out. Yes, and she hits the runner behind her in the face with her phone.
Oh wow!
And I've got the photo which captures that moment. But you know what? Everyone's just in such, the energy is so high that the achievement and everyone else's energy and the love and the crowd that,
right.
You know, it's just a beautiful event.
Oh, it looks great. It looks great. You know, it's hard to imagine today how would life be without our phones. Yes. You know, today you're in style, tomorrow you're out of style. It's changing so quickly that it's hard to keep up with the changes in technology. Yes. But it's a great thing, like capturing that photo, you just have to have your phone. You know, in the old days, it was a big camera. I remember my father with this massive camera that he took all over everywhere we went. And this camera was so precious, and it weighed maybe 2-3 kilos.
Yes.
And, you know, and my mother, I'm Lebanese originally. And my mother back in their days, you know, they got married very early and they left Lebanon and they went abroad. So my mother got married at like 14 years old to a basic stranger. She didn't even know my father, you know, and so she left Lebanon and she traveled like this innocent child being shipped away with a foreigner to a foreign country across the world. And at that time, there was no technology. There was no way of her mother knowing, is my daughter okay? There was no way of my mother getting in touch with her family, you know, so it was a big traumatic experience. And now, like, it's a total different world. And as you were saying about your father, he's in his 80s. You were saying that he now has a phone, you know, and even my father, he's in his 80s as well, and he now has a phone. So, and he's on that phone all the time, calling, you know, every single person all across the world. And I myself have just come to Australia not long ago, not knowing anybody as well. And so I was always on the phone calling my friends. Like, I don't even know how I got through the days without that phone.
Yes.
So technology has been a really great thing.
Absolutely, we hear you, and that is so true. That technology here, perfect example of how comforting it can be. And
Will, can I just jump in quickly and just respond to Xavier, who asked the question about how do we communicate the negatives that we're seeing? The government at the moment has captured us with almost daily updates as to, you know, what the lockdown is, the easing. Governments have also said to a lot of groups around the country, we need help with mental health. You have our attention, because mental health is impacting economically and socially. Come up with initiatives and we will help you through funding, through our power to get some of them communicated. So the time is unusual now, more so than 12 months ago. 12 months ago, Xavier, we couldn't have the attention of government. We have it now. So I think we've got a window of 3 to 6 months to put proposals to them. We know the right people, state and federal. It's the same overseas. So let's work together. Part of what this slide's about as well. Let's work together and come up with solutions and take it to government, because government's saying they need it.
All right. Well, Apollo, you'll be our last comment. Yep, go ahead.
I want to add to Chris's and Lando's point. That is the question of use of COVID-19 and the use of technology. And I'm referring to the case recently happened, I think about last week. You all know about Africa Day, the day when African nations recall and remember when they come together. And in Africa and the other parts of the world, we've had religious wars. When one group believes the other one, they fight and all that sort of thing. Because of technology and because of the medium we are talking about, and because of COVID-19, African Union called upon all Africans, including those in diaspora, come together in the interfaith dialogue, in whichever faith you are in, and we pray so that COVID-19 does not adversely go and invade Africa where it's not yet there. And this prayer thing that we had last week on the 25th of May was wonderful. It confirms what Rand and Chris has been saying, that a new approach on spirituality and the faith has come in a dialogue, creating peace away from those kind of fights we've had because of religious differences. And I think that's a very positive outcome. And that's my observation and comment. And thank you for both of you to bring this point very strong.
Thank you, Dr. Apollo. If we could now, please, if I could now please move on to our next topic. Our next speaker is Dr. The UPF Vice President, Dr. Joan Bellavance, will be talking on managing ourselves and self-actualization, where it involves achieving a sense of fulfillment by realizing our values and our potential. And this relies on managing our mind and body well and focusing on values, purpose, and love. So I would like now to ask Dr. John Bellavance to please present us with his topic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Look, I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible. This particular presentation is a result of 40 years of reflection. I did my PhD on the topic of values and the use of technology. So this is our theme. If you look at the background of my screen, the theme of the PowerPoint is very much to do with technology. So when I went through my journey to look and understand the role of values, essentially I came to understand that there's a difference between personal values and moral values. And that is that personal values, they advance our own objectives, and they're like likes and dislikes, whether we like music, our taste in food. However, moral values are much more significant because they affect others, and they are necessary to advance the public good, such as altruism, freedom, and justice. So why do I talk about this? Is because, in fact, immoral values are also real, and that is that immoral values such as selfishness, injustice, corruption, in that sense, undermine the public good. So the distinction can also, this distinction between personal and private can be understood as personality and character. So for example, each of our personalities are unique, while the character is underpinned by moral values such as integrity, justice, and self-discipline. And these are common to what we determine as a good character. This is a picture of myself giving a presentation last year about the importance of values and mental health. So the federal government had a productivity commission in which they asked different people to submit, do submissions with respect to mental health and productivity in the workplace. And I said to them, I opened my statement by saying that you cannot have mental health in the workplace unless we have clear values and that we have values education. However, immediately the question came, which is, which values, John? They asked me many times. I've been asked this question many times, which values, whose values? Of course, this is a very complex issue, and that's why I'm saying to you, you're going to go through 40 years of my reflection on this in about 10 minutes. But it's very complex, and it's complex because we live in a pluralistic society. People believe all kinds of things, and moral judgments can be subjective and based on our own worldviews and cultures. Some moral values are shared across cultures, while others vary between social groups and cultural contexts. So we face this dilemma right now. In some ways, spirituality, my son told me the other day that religion, people aren't interested in religion and spirituality. Of course, some are. But in general, we live in a very materialistic, very much driven by science and technology. And religion is not that relevant when it comes to driving the agenda and policy. We look at, particularly in the Western world, we look at policy and development very much based on, not based necessarily on spiritual values or even sometimes moral values. So we have sort of a moral relativism. That is that there's, we're facing this dilemma. Well, look, John, there's no real shared values here. And if we push that to the logical limit, we can conclude that all moral values, however nice they sound, they're all non-rational. They're basically very personal. Wow. So therefore, we fear indoctrination of a particular worldview, So we may decide, let's stay away from defining moral values. This has been in my journey in academia and others, that, you know, talking about shared values is without a doubt something controversial. However, many, of course, recognize that permissiveness, that is, well, we'll just allow anything, is not the answer either, because it holds no general moral authority. And actually, conflicts cannot be resolved without shared values. So why do we need shared value? We need moral values. Well, standards of right and wrong and behaviors that determine outcomes of our lives are very real. So if you look at your own life or my own life, my values matter. They really do matter, because it depends. This matters to my wife, to my children, to my colleagues. It matters to the people that I interact with and what I do. And the outcomes of my life and how I affect other people is clearly an expression of my values. And in a civilized open society, the majority of people abide by social contracts. We agree with those, and these underpin our security and mutual prosperity. So as a human race, we've made value judgments. We've made value judgments of what's better. So for example, justice and human rights is better than injustice, excuse me, and altruism is better than selfishness. So therefore, the idea of a value-free choice is a contradiction in terms. Now, for most of you here today, this is probably irrelevant, but you have to realize that we live in a society where whenever you talk about values or spiritual values, there will be resistance to say, whose values? Who determines this? So I'm making the argument that the idea of a value-free choice doesn't exist. And that is because any value judgments are preconditions to the actions that we take, isn't it? This is what we consider to be important. So shared values are critical to the existence of society. They allow people to understand each other. They stabilize human interactions. They create trust. Without shared values, we can't have clear policies to manage immigration. So if you look at the global village right now, you know that the UN and all of these government bodies are finding it very difficult to manage immigration. Immigration is now a very big issue, right? And why is this an issue? Fundamentally, of course, it's a human problem, but it's also a values problem. And that is that we need to have some shared understanding or values of how we can do this. It's the same with the environment. The environmental issues are fundamentally a values problem, because we need to have shared policies on a global level to solve global problems. So we can't determine our obligations as national and global citizens without shared values. We cannot guide scientific and technological development ethically and sustainably. We cannot set economic policies and rules of trade. A spirit of cooperation is clearly what UPF is advocating as its core, is that a spirit of cooperation is needed for human beings to resolve global problems that we face today. We need to view ourselves as members of one human family. All humans have obligations towards others in the human race, and this is vital to our survival. However, there is a conflict of values. And here's where, again, value steps in, and that is that division, corruption, injustice, and conflict is ultimately a conflict of values. So what's the basis? What is the basis for differences between values perspectives? The first is selfishness. In the end, because of selfishness, how can we find common good and to find the common will to work together if we don't overcome our selfishness? If you look at any problems of organizations, whether they're community, top-level governments, the fundamental problem where there is a conflict is because there's self-interest. And so therefore self-interest needs to be pushed aside, and hence the importance of moral values. So this is why I argued this. So the question comes up all the time, which shared values? Well, let's take a look at historically the modern code of values in the Western perspective in liberal values are tolerance and freedom. Provide that people don't harm themselves, and my son tells me this, well, look, as provided people don't hurt each other, don't harm each other, and don't violate the freedom of others, it's all good, no problem, Dad. However, however important tolerance is, it's a willingness, for example, to tolerate the opinions and behaviors of others. It does not foster a willingness to understand and care for others. Freedom, on the other hand, requires an active participation of citizens to advance the public good. So therefore, I conclude with what are the values in the global village? And this is also a debate that is very current. The debate about the merits of values of different cultures, we have today here people from different faiths and different cultures, is the key conversation in our global village right now. I'll give you an example. Most people who are cultural relativists in Australia would argue that we should simply celebrate the diversity and give equal value to all beliefs and practices, right? Multiculturalism. We celebrate multiculturalism. However, human diversity is great when it comes to food and music and literature and so on, and philosophy, but it's not that great when it comes that when human dignity and human rights are violated. So we still are faced with the question, is tolerance enough? The answer is it cannot be. We have to have active, positive values. So there are key questions here that people are, if you look at the literature in this area, the first is, which cultures are better? Do you think that that debate occurs in Australia? Guarantee it does. In other words, which cultures are better is a big debate in Australian society, in a multicultural society, and around the world. However, as Dr. Apollo once said to me, focus is not on the positives or on the shared values, but it focuses on power. Who's better? And it focuses on power. The second question is better, which is, what values do we have in common? It's like Apollo once said to me, it's better not to look at power politics between men and women, but to find the shared values of how we can make the family work better. That's the second approach, which is the approach that UPF takes. So the focus is not on power, but on cooperation. So we need, to do this, we need a shared value perspective that will serve the common welfare of humanity and be unchanging. And this is an interesting word in our day and age, that is values that we can rely on from generation to generation. So this was the conclusion and sense of my, won't talk about this much. This is the conclusion of my PhD, and that is that human beings are essentially, if you look at moral philosophy, moral psychology, if you study that sphere, you'll realize that in the end, everything breaks down to moral reasoning, moral emotion, and moral behavior. So a human being's morality can be understood with those three. So we're about reasoning, we're about feeling, and we're about behavior. It's interesting to note that all religions of the world talk about truth, beauty, and goodness. Now, I put that in there. It's because actually truth is very much to do with moral reasoning, whereas beauty is very much to do with heart or beauty or emotion. And goodness, well, goodness is obvious. It's to do with behavior. That is, goodness is when I actualize the behaviors that are good for myself and others. And below that, I listed those values. Now, the problem we have today is that, in fact, we do have a value perspective, but in some way it's called a materialistic value perspective. So we have to recognize that each of us have worldviews, each of us have values perspective, but as a society in Australia and as a global society, our value perspective is primarily focused on the development of science and technology. And this is great because we're talking about the topic of technology today and the growth of economics, but this has had an incredible influence on fostering a materialistic value perspective in human beings. And if we're honest, we can see within ourselves and our society. So here's the concluding few slides. In the final analysis, in UPF, we've, you know, and many, not just UPF, but many philosophers or many spiritual traditions in history or moral people have come to the final analysis to a conclusion. That in the final analysis, the standard of value that serves the common welfare of humanity is love. The absolute moral standard. And this is hard to say, isn't it? Wow, absolute moral standard. To say that for an academic is radical. Absolute moral standard. However, love can be considered absolute because it is unchanging. It exists independently and is not relative to culture. Love, in some way, is the core value that drives the motivations, the decisions, and the actions of the family. Chris spoke about this. One could argue that this standard of love in the family has never changed in history. Never changed. Now, you might say, oh, yeah, it has changed because people don't always love each other and they're not actually very nice family members. But the standard of love, the love of a parent for their child has never changed across history and has never changed across cultures. So despite the fact, so people of good conscience and religious people have always placed love as the highest value. In love, there is no discrimination based on color or nationality, and so therefore love can be considered universal. From a spiritual perspective, a standard of value that serves the welfare of others and is unchanging is based on God's love. And this is my final argument. And to be honest with you, of everything I say today, forget about it, because I'm giving you sort of a history of the debate of what moral values are right or not. But I share with you from the sincerity of a spiritual man and also an intellectual that in the end, it has to be based on God's love, and that is from personal experience. This can be referred to then finally as the absolute value perspective. And I say this because many spiritual texts share a common view that goodness includes the ethics of love and self-sacrifice. God's love is the source of truth, goodness, and beauty. So if you study religious texts, you'll find that they have a lot in common because love and truth, beauty, and goodness centered on love forms the basis for religious virtues. It's interesting. So for example, in Islam, it says that not one of you is a believer until he loves his brother what he loves for himself. In Hinduism, to love is to know God. In Judaism and Christianity, advocate that we love our neighbor as ourselves. Confucianism encourages us to embrace universal love. And this is considered the true form of benevolence and righteousness, which are the core values of Confucianism. While Sikhism maintains that one should be known as true, who to the truth is devoted to love. In Christianity, it is argued that God is love, that love is patient and kind, that love is not jealous or boastful. It is not arrogant. Love does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable, resentful. It does not rejoice in the wrong, but rejoices in the right. In Buddhism, maintains that compassion is a mind that savors only mercy and love for all sentient beings. So in conclusion, when we look at the following values, what do we look at and the values that I would have loved to have talked about, the framework that I built for a digital moral framework, but it included the values of integrity, honesty, trustworthiness, and authenticity and accountability, which are basically related to moral reasoning. Someone who is authentic and real and accountable. It's very easy to be fake in the digital space. That's for another lecture. But they're actually all associated with truth and love. While empathy and self-control, responsibility, altruism, justice, respect are also practices associated with goodness and love. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you, Dr. John Bellavance. Wow. God. Darlene, you had your hand up. Please go ahead. Unmute yourself. Darlene, yeah,
No, I
go
didn't
ahead.
have my hand up. I was just clapping.
Oh, you were clapping. All right.
Can I
Adini,
say something, Will?
yes, please. You go ahead, Apollo, then Adini will go next.
John, thank you very much. This is
Yes.
really insightful. I just bring a little bit from my management point of view, or one of those things that I've been teaching. And we all know that conflict is positive. It's not necessarily negative. But when conflict takes the negative dimensions, divergence of values or perspectives, then it becomes very negative. And we say, Will, you know that the moment we have differences of opinion, conflict, it is vital for organizational growth and business because those come in differently. But how do we deal with conflict? It's either win or lose. We say win or lose situations. When we talk about win-win, it is vital that, John, you are talking about this kind of win-win. You know why? You are saying that for success, the parties must bring stakes to the middle of the common interest. And that's what win-win is. I'm not talking from a spiritual or moral point of view. I'm talking about a business management point of view. All of you that have done business management, that's what we say. Thank you.
Thank you, Adini.
I just wanted to add, say, I'm not sure this will answer your question, Apollo, but one of the things that I regret in my life is that when I had situations with family members that were awkward because of personality differences, if I had to do it again, I would have more moral courage, and that is that I would be very honest about who I am, and I would, in a way, I don't like the word conflict, but I would certainly bring up the issue that was difficult, and I could have actually resolved. I won't go into details into it because we're being recorded here and it's very personal, but later things would have developed much better in my relationship with that person had I actually been honest and said, look, I don't agree with you. Here's what I feel about it. So in that sense, that is also a form of love. And I have to say, I regret that I wasn't more loving and more honest with other people. So anyway, it's different in business, but I just wanted to share that personal experience.
But as you said, John, tolerance is a problem. Why? You take on responsibility and leave the other party not bring stakes. Therefore, tolerance is not necessarily a good value system.
Yeah.
It is very cherished in Western society, as you well know, Dr. Apollo. Those are the two values that underpin our society at the moment, and that is tolerance and freedom. So we do need to be tolerant, but we have to go beyond that. That's the problem. To build a global village, tolerance isn't going to cut it.
No.
Yeah. Adini?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Will. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Adini Ekine. I just have a general question for the House. It might not be really on the point of the two presentations, but because we are here talking about peace, togetherness, and living for the sake of others. My first point is there anything or there's a way how we can educate people more about what is happening in the United States of America at the moment? Because this is escalating about the black man that has been killed, and this is seen as racism. And this is something that bothers me a lot because I've always had some of my Christian friends tells me, oh, they prefer somebody that is more religious, like the United States president at the moment, than somebody that is black. So, and I look at it, I said, no, religion divides us, But if we talk about race, we look at ourselves as the same. But when we say religion, we now say some people are from this other place and some people, and this is really causing a lot. And now, because people have been saying this for a very long time, now the people are taking to the street and defending each other. And something relating to that again, I want to ask, now that the United States has withdrawn from WHO, World Health Organization, what effect will that have on United Nations and the UPF? Because from one thing leads to another. And is there anything we can do to release a press release concerning all this, to send some things to our members at large? Thank you so much.
Okay. I was going to ask Chris if he had some thoughts or Shahid on that one, but I'll just say with the issue of racism in the United States, you know, you can be religious but be racist. You can be religious and be an absolute horrible person. To me, that's not the criteria. The criteria, the absolute standard is love. And so that changes the whole dynamic on that note. But second, to do with the racism in the United States, obviously we realize that, you see, we need to have a shared values for racism to be eliminated. And so, and with the World Health Organization, it does worry me. I have to tell you, because UPF is supporting the UN and is one of the key organizations that's supporting the United Nations, including the former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon attended our conference this year. It does worry me, Denis, and I have to say, look, this is on a geopolitical area. The idea of isolating ourselves and saying, look, if I don't like something, I'm just going to walk away from it and in a global village, it doesn't work. There's going to be a lot of rebuilding that needs to occur as an international community. So I don't see that as particularly helpful. I don't know what Chris or Shahid wants. Chris, you want to share something on that?
Sure. It's a tough topic, but because, especially in the US, there have been previous shootings or deaths of young Black Americans. And when this occurs, again, somebody asked the question, is it a culture that's causing disproportionate force for this part of America? And then when it does happen and everyone recognizes it's the wrong thing, then the authorities have almost a moral authority to act really quickly and stamp it down. Now, unfortunately, in the case at the moment, I'd suspect that a significant proportion of the protesters who are burning and causing havoc are not related to this issue. They're just anti-Trump or want to cause violence and bring other issues on the agenda. But like, if we just take a step back and you think, okay, something happens in your community, what do you do to avoid the community being out of control? The leaders, including the moral leaders, including religious institutions, as well as formal government, should have an immediate response to say, wrong, that was a terrible thing that happened. It won't happen again, if you will. We're going to put training measures. Everyone's going to come out and say that it's not a norm of how we do things in our society. Now, that's what the Americans are trying to do. But when you have these third-party groups coming in and causing trouble for motives not related to this, you've got to stamp it down. But again, like anything, it's like a fight in the schoolyard. When the teachers come with authority and say, right, this is the way it'll be managed, everyone tends to quieten down and say, oh, okay, all right, fair enough, they're the rules. So I think we need to have that moral authority.
Yeah.
Stamped
Can I just say,
quickly.
Thank you, Chris. I just wanted to jump in because Shahid wanted to say something, and then Lawrence, you'll be second. Sorry, Will, if I'm jumping in here. I just saw Shahid. Did you want to share?
Yes, I have often pondered about the concept of spirituality and religion, because religion is ordained in terms of rituals and certain way of behaving, etc., etc. To my mind, I believe that actually spirituality comes from the heart. The goodness comes from the heart, not from the brain. The brain doesn't tell you that, today you are going to do one good thing and so on and so forth. Actually, it comes from the feelings from the heart. And what I have seen in my observation, and this is irrespective of any religion, including Islam, what I have seen is that people are sometimes very religious. They do all the rituals that are required to be done, etc., etc., etc. But they do not have the morality or humanity that is necessary to deal with human beings. Now, this is, I'm making not a general statement, but I have seen that many of examples of that sort of behavior. To my mind, spirituality is something that if I am spiritual, I am going to be very comfortable sitting with a Christian priest, because my spirituality tells me that, okay, my rituals are different from a Christianity, and there may be some areas of belief which may be slightly different. But the point is that if I want to be a good human being and a spiritual human being, then I can relate to almost every religion, every type of human beings from every culture, etc., etc. So I created a saying that spirituality unites people, and religion tends to divide people, because then we put people in various segments of humanity. So I don't know, this is just a comment, and I don't know what the rest of you would think about it. But I believe that if one focus on spirituality, now religion sometimes can actually add value to spirituality, but sometimes it doesn't, because people think that if they do the rituals, then everything is going to be all right. And that is not really, I believe, what God wanted. God wants spirituality to come, and that is the commonality that should happen in all religions. But unfortunately, sometimes some people are more focused on rituals and forget the spirituality. So that's a comment, and I would like them to see other people's viewpoints.
Thank you. Randall? Go ahead.
Sorry, Lawrence had his hand up. Will?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go, he's next. Yep.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to contribute to what Ambassador Ikene has just raised, issue of racism and the killings of the black guy in America. The issue of killings in America is not something of today. The debate has been going on for over a decade, and no one has been able to find a solution to the issue. The public outcry in America, I think, is still ongoing. The riots and public outcry and property damage is completely going. Some few celebrities have come out to say something. People are still waiting for the federal government in America to actually say something about it. But if you look at the population in where the issue takes place, I think it's about 14% of the black people. So far, so good. The people that have come out to condemn it or say something about it through the government in Minneapolis, they are all white folks,
and they have not been able to pinpoint the actual issue. They only come out to say they are investigating. So God so kind, the guy has been remanded to custody. He's been arrested. Before he was only just discharged from the service, which led to the public outcry. This was a complete murder case, and it was a senseless act. The issue that the guy was arrested for, probably he has a bank check that was bounced, and that led to the issue of being arrested and then killing the guy when people were crying and all that stuff. Now, when you talk about the issue of spiritualities and Christianity, the way I view it is completely different from where other people might view it. Christianity is something, it's a practice, just like every other religion. But when it comes to spiritualities, it is an imbued selflessness that people use as sort of kindness to monitor the human feelings, imbued, that you have to use to help other people. Everybody cannot be having that gift. There are a lot of pastors, there are a lot of reverends, there are a lot of doctrinated people out there. But Christianity is a way of preaching to the people to respect one another. If no Christianity or if no religion on this world today, I think we would have been living in a state of anarchy. So Christianity, the way I see it, is just to get people together to respect one another and provide for your neighbor and respect an individual. Don't do what other people cannot do to you. Spirituality is a different ball game when it talks about Christianity. People see visions, people dreams, all these things are gifted by God. That's the way I see it. So issue of racism is something we need to find a way to raise it on our platform and condemn it. It happens every day, even within ourselves. It happens. Yeah, that's where I see it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I'm going to have Randall, then Nizar. Randall, unmute yourself.
Thank you. Basically, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was when John was talking about tolerance. Basically, when you get two different groupings there that see themselves as different, then if they see themselves as enemies, this is when they have to agree, okay, not to kill each other for a while. That's basically the definition of tolerance. The thing is, though, they come from a common source. And so when we understand the common purpose for getting together, that's what can help us to get together again and have the two groups to be able to have some harmony. This is the kind of thing that has been presented in the unification movement and is very different from previous type of philosophies. Before, there was just this kind of concept where there was thesis, antithesis, and the result of the survivors of battling away according to Marxism was the end all. But when you have the purpose there as well, that's the thing that helps to get things together.
Thank you. Nizar?
Okay, hello everyone. Just very, very quickly on what just Randall says, we can always look at differences and see them as an advantage, because that's how we can complement one another. If between, let's say, my wife and I, she likes to do the houseworks but doesn't like gardening, but I like gardening, I don't like houseworks, it's great. I can do gardening, she can do housework, instead of both hating gardening and liking the same thing, and then who's going to complement? Like, there's no need. Actually, a difference can be, as he just explained, they can be, the differences can be, make us complementary to one another and make us, if we unite in love, that makes us actually a perfect one instead of looking at conflicts, which is what I wanted very quickly to talk about. I'm moving back to when we were talking about conflicts, and Dr. John, you said if you had your time again, you would deal differently with the misunderstandings. You didn't call it conflicts between like family members and so on. You would have told what's right and what's wrong instead of being like more sort of accommodating to everyone. I'm going to tell a very quick joke, but it does fit the purpose. There's this guy, and he had two neighbors who have sort of problems between one another. So the first guy comes to him and he says, the first neighbor says, our neighbor, second neighbor did such and such to me. What do you say? He says, and the guy says, you're right. Then this neighbor leaves, and the other neighbor comes in, neighbor number two, and again expresses the same thing. And he says, what do you say, Mr. Judge? And he says, you're right. Then this guy goes. The man's wife comes to him and she says, what are you doing? You said to this guy, you're right, and to the other guy, you're right. You think you're making the situation better? You're making it worse. And he looked at his wife and he said, you're right. So unfortunately, we are living in a world where we try to tell people what makes them happy. We try to please more than stick to our own convictions and beliefs, and we tend not to say what's right and what's wrong, and that makes us all know what's right and what's wrong, but no one is willing to tell the truth. Everyone is happy to roll along, let somebody else tell them that this is wrong. Why should I pick a fight with this person? I'll be in his good books. And so it rolls, and no one stands up and tells what is right and correct. This is one of our problems nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you. Nelson, do you have anything to say?
Just want to say thank you, John, and thank you, Chris, and thank you, Brother Will. Today we have a beautiful discussion about caring, peace, love, and overcoming of selfishness, and freedom, and peace, and love, which is impartial and unchanging and unfailing love. So thank you very much. God be with all of you.
Thank you.
Peace be with you.
Thank you, Nelson.
Thank you very much.
I would like to thank you all for being on the call today, and thank you to Dr. Chris and to Dr. John. And we look forward to reconnecting with you at our next webinar, which is going to be with Ms. Darlene Haddad, talking about attachment theory, and with Dr. John Bellavance on managing ourselves and self-actualization, part 2. So with that, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time, and have a great evening.
Thank you too.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you,
Have a
Will.
good night.
Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you, Will.
Forward for your
Thank you, John.
darling.
Thank you.
Friends.
Thank you all.
everybody.
Nice.
God
Thank
bless
you.
you. May God bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Bye.